Today, guys, I'm going to be going over the best tricks so you can combo your enemies inside of Roblox Bedwars. And if you guys do want to get a kit for yourself of any kind and you just happen to be early to this video, drop a like, subscribe, and comment your username down below. Anyways, guys, for the first thing that you guys need to do to absolutely combo your enemies is get good at tracking. Now, tracking is a really important part of getting combos in Bedwars because it is the sole reason to determine whether you actually get an extra hit off of your enemies or not. You want to make sure that your mouse cursor is always over your enemies. You never want that mouse cursor to leave your enemy. And this is where third-person combos can come really in handy because if you're really good at tracking with the mouse pointer, you can aim in third person to absolutely destroy your enemies. However, first person is advised simply because it's what most people are used to and it's the easiest to track with. You can also convert your sensitivity over from literally any other game. So that is why tracking is really important. Anyways, guys, for the next thing that you really want to get good at if you want to master the art of comboing is juking out your opponents. Now, what I mean by juking is actually making unexpected plays on your opponents so they get thrown off guard. I'll touch on this a little bit more later in the video, but the most basic thing you can do without using any kits or any other items is swaying from side to side. You'll throw off your enemy's tracking so badly, and hopefully you have really good tracking and you're able to hit your opponents a few more times. To be honest, guys, this is probably one of the most underrated things that you guys need to start doing if you want to hit more combos, because if you properly utilize this, you'll be able to hit any combo you want on any player, especially if you get really good at it. There is no stopping you if you're able to sway off your enemy's tracking. Definitely make sure you're using this though if you do want to get some more combos on your enemies, because the average player is not going to expect you moving from side to side. Make sure you are moving randomly though. Do not make your movements recognizable, because if a player is really good, they're going to instantly know what you're trying to do and counteract it. Anyways, guys, this may be a controversial one, but I'm going to be talking about CPS, all right? Clicks per second. Now, you may love it or hate it, but some people think that right now macros are the meta, and I'm here to completely shut that down. A lot of players, including myself at most times, do actually jitter click in order to hit their combos. Now, jitter clicking is literally just the process of clicking as fast as you can with one finger, and most of the time you can get the exact same results as if you were to use a macro. A macro is just a lazier way of jitter clicking, to be honest. You can get the exact same results just by organically clicking, and myself and many other creators know this already. It definitely is a myth when it comes to PvP. Yeah, it can be helpful sometimes to use a macro, but it definitely isn't required. Same thing with bridges as well. If you want to get a nice quick combo over your opponents by tele-bridging or anything like that, you can just start butterfly clicking, which is when you use two fingers on the same mouse button and you get double the CPS. It's super overpowered. Now, CPS does also depend on what mouse you are using as well. Of course, if you're using macros, then try and get the best CPS possible. But if you're jitter clicking, you want to aim around the 7 to 8 CPS mark. If you can click 7 to 8 CPS consistently, then you'll easily be able to combo your opponents if you take into consideration everything else that I have to say in this video. Comboing people is not just about CPS. Everyone makes CPS videos for some reason, and to be honest, it is so overrated. Anyways, guys, for the next thing that I do want to cover as well is actually using blocks to increase the probability of you hitting a combo on your opponents. Now, blocks are actually a really crucial part of Bedwars, especially for hitting combos. There are tons of different ways to utilize blocks to enhance your combos, like building up and dropping down, which is a good old classic strategy, and actually using blocks to block your enemy's line of sight so you can hit their toes and catch a nice combo on them. My favorite one to use by far is definitely tele-bridging, because it is such an unexpected move and you can do it in so many different scenarios. Most of the time, you can just tele-bridge forward and drop down and combo your opponents because they're not expecting the outplay that you're about to perform. And just like that though, bridging up and blocking your enemy's line of sight is just as important. So if you can get good at all of those, then you'll be laughing. You'll be able to absolutely destroy your opponents, because even if you don't have the best CPS or even if you don't have the best aim, if you have the best outplays, then you are guaranteed to win a majority of your fights. Anyways, guys, for the next thing that really enhances your combos, alright, is Gloops. You may be wondering, what the heck does a Gloop have to do with getting a combo? It makes no sense at all. Well, guys, let me tell you a few different things about the Gloops that may enhance your combos. So, I'm sure you know what the Gloops do, guys. They slow your opponents down and they do 1 bit of damage. Well, you're gonna actually pair the Gloops and the static enchant to actually stop your opponents from healing altogether for the next 10 to 15 seconds. Honestly, I've called out the static enchant for being really bad, but if you are able to use it with the Gloops, then your opponents will not be able to heal for a majority of that fight, giving you a crazy upper hand, especially if you're the first person to Gloop. It also gives you a nice upper hand in your combos as well, because your enemies are not going to be able to regen for the remainder of that fight. So Gloops are very important. Even if you don't get the static enchant, you get forest, you get fire, you get literally any enchant. The Gloops stop your opponents from regenning and they make them slower, making it a lot easier for you to combo them. So definitely use your Gloops if you're on the later stages of the game, because that's when you can get the best combos. Anyways, guys, another thing that you guys really need to consider if you want to hit some consistent combos, and that is your ping. Now, your ping is very important when it comes to combos and your FPS, your frame rate, your frames per second. This is basically just how smoothly your game is going to run. Taking both things into consideration will definitely change how your combos are going to be affected. For example, if you have a low FPS, you are more prone to getting fling up in the air. And if you have high ping, you are more prone to taking more knockback or just having really laggy hits. You need to make sure you either have a stable ping and a stable frame rate if you want to hit more consistent combos, but you can also use this to your advantage as well. Since you have higher ping, if your opponents are taking knockback, they're going to be taking delayed knockback, meaning that you're going to be able to get a nice advantage when you're hitting your opponents. Since the knockback is going to take ages to reply to the server, and you'll just be able to get a nice combo on your opponents before they even take any knockback. Same goes for the FPS thing as well. If you're getting flinged up in the air a bunch, use that to your advantage. Make sure you're constantly aiming at your opponents, and so when you get flinged up, you basically have an easy high ground advantage. A lot of people actually don't take these things into consideration and just take them for granted, or they use it as an excuse to blame their bad gameplay. It sometimes can be really bad, don't get me wrong, but it definitely doesn't give you a disadvantage. Anyways, guys, for the next thing to enhance your combos is getting a Tele-pearl combo on your opponents. Now, Tele-pearls are honestly a lot more important than you think, okay? Because they can be used in a few different scenarios to enhance your combos. For example, if you're trying to chase down an enemy, you can throw a Tele-pearl directly on their feet and they're not going to expect it. You'll be able to get at least 2 hits off your opponents before the fight even begins. Especially if you precisely aim your Tele-pearl to where it lands directly on them, you'll get an easy advantage and easily be able to take out your opponent. You could also use Tele-pearls to reset the fight if you just got absolutely comboed. Say you're in the other position, alright? You are the one that got Tele-pearled onto and you got comboed. You can actually use Tele-pearls to reset the fight. You can either distance yourself or you can Tele-pearl behind your opponents to catch an equal combo on your opponents. Make sure you're thinking about these things, especially later stages in the game, because Tele-pearls are a big part of hitting combos. In fact, I probably use about 90% of Tele-pearls to actually catch combos on my opponents or just engage into fights. They are very useful and very underrated for catching combos on your enemies. Now, another thing that you do want to consider as well, if you do want to get some crazy combos on your opponents, is the weapons that you are using before you even engage in the fight. Now, what I mean by this is what sort of weapons are you using to do initial damage before the fight even starts. For example, if you're using the Enzo Wizard kit, you can actually use the Wizard Staff to get a few hits of damage off of your opponents before you even engage in the first sword fight. What you can also do as well is you can use a crossbow, which is the main thing that I'm going to be covering over in this, to actually deal the first bit of damage before the fight even starts. This gives you an upper hand when comboing your opponents and definitely changes the balance of the game. Because even if your opponents have a perfectly even combo than you, you'll still win the fight simply because you engaged with the crossbow first. You can also intertwine between the crossbow and the sword if you think you can react fast enough to do that, which will give you some initial damage at destroying your opponents. Now, another thing that you guys do want to also consider as well is your keybinds. Now, it may seem silly, but settings / keybinds are very, very important for hitting combos on your opponents. For example, I would recommend turning the FOV all the way up to 100, simply because you get a larger field of view and you can see where your opponents are moving constantly. This gives you a nice easy advantage that no one else really knows about. And of course, the top players are using the max FOV because they want to see as much as possible. And another thing that you should also consider as well is aim training and getting a good reaction time. Now, having good hand-eye coordination and having good reaction time are two crucial things that really determine how well you can combo in Roblox Bedwars. Now, having good reaction time is really good for when your opponents make quick moves. You can react really quickly and easily make a counterplay to their moves. Or say if someone just Tele-pearled on you, you can just react really quickly, build up, get a nice combo on them. Reaction time is very useful. As for hand-eye coordination, it just determines how well you can track your opponents and how well you can flick your wrist and flick on your opponents. So if you really want to master combos, if you're serious about mastering combos, then hand-eye coordination and reaction time are the two best ways to do it. And if you're wondering if all of these tricks actually work, well, guys, I actually did 1v1 a nightmare player, and I would say I did pretty well in the 1v1. We were pretty equal in terms of the 1v1. I'm sure by now you've seen footage within this video somehow, and you can see that we were basically trading and being equal every single time. So in my opinion, that just proves that these methods that I've listed definitely work.